Tonight's guest is Gregory Keith Brooks. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate you, man. You don't know how much we appreciate you.
Well, like I said, that goes two ways. One wouldn't work without the other. Keith, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I don't know about if I can do that, but I can try. Well, let's see. I'm a Pisces. I'm good looking. No, okay. All right. So I try to breach things with trying to be funny. Okay. So I am a investigator. I am a detective. I'm a logical-based human being. I spent 10 years as a detective and culinary degree. I have a culinary degree. I cook good things. And I drove trucks for about 20 years. I'm 54 years old, and I've been in many different places. There's not a place I haven't been in the lower 48 as far as states.
Wow, you have been around then. You had your encounter in 1985 or 86, Keith, when you were a kid. What can you tell us about the area where you grew up?
The area where I grew up was a place called Nonconnah Creek. It's a creek in Shelby County, Tennessee, which is inside of the city of Memphis. And what I can tell you about this place is it was a great place to grow up. It was a wonderful place to grow up. We moved there in 1980, and growing up there was nothing but fishing on the creek and just finding rocks and living in the woods and being around nature, which my whole family was sharecroppers. So they came from a background of looking at this as this is what we want for our kid. So they were looking at it like we're making better for our children. We're making better for our kid. And we built a house on a little street called Rivercrest. Now, Rivercrest was a street that dead-ended into a road that was called Linfield. And Rivercrest is no longer there because of a highway that took the road and took our house. So we grew up on a creek, and we grew up in a very wooded area. You would not think it was a wooded area, but it was. So you had on either side of the creek bank probably about 200 yards of woods when I was a kid.
Growing up with woods around your home the way you did, had you heard about Dogman before you had your encounter?
No, sir. We never heard about Dogman. We didn't even know what a Dogman was. A skinwalker? We never thought about that.
Well, you didn't have any reason to unless you had heard about them, then that'd be the last thing you would think about or know about. Until you found out what it was that you encountered, how convinced were you that it was actually a werewolf?
I was zero convinced it was a werewolf. Zero. I mean, this is probably like final conclusion stuff, but I never thought this was some kind of shapeshifter or something like that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you didn't jump to that conclusion. Yeah, that just would have made it that much more difficult to deal with. How long did it take you to find out what it really was that terrorized you and your friends that night?
Well, it wasn't just that night. It was several nights, but that's a good question. That's a really good question, and I'm not sure about the answer for that because it's always been in the back of my mind about what this is and what this was and what the nature of this thing is.
Well, it doesn't matter that you don't know exactly when you did realize or find out that it was actually a Dogman. I'm just glad you eventually did find out. That's all that matters. I didn't know this until you told me in our first conversation, but Memphis has an extensive tunnel system under it. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, I can tell you a lot about that, actually. When we were kids, and even my father, when he was still alive, we would walk under these tunnel systems just to get to different places. And it was extensive. Not only the external drainage ditches on the outside of the city, but also the internal drainage ditches on the inside of the city, because you could hit a tunnel and you could make a right and you could be in downtown Memphis in like 10 minutes. Literally. Because what you're talking about is there's no streets. It's as the crow flies. You know, it's something to look at. You know, it's something to think about. But, you know, when you're a kid and you see a black hole, you walk into a place and it's got crickets going on and it's got branches overhanging the entrance, and you're like, man, I'm in Machu Picchu. I'm about to explore some stuff. And you light up a torch and you go in there and, you know, it's an adventure. I mean, it's a true adventure because you don't know what you're going to run into. And I swear to God, as funny as it may sound, it's an amazing thing that we never got typhoid or dysentery or any kind of other thing from this water, because it's nasty. It's a nasty place to be, but we were in there and we walked across the city, under the city, in tunnels. And I think that's what this thing does.
Oh, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they do use those tunnels all the time.
Well, I mean, it just makes sense. Why wouldn't you? You don't want to be seen. You don't want to be heard. And this thing wants to be heard when it wants to be heard. And that's another thing I will get at. This thing causes fear. So I don't think this is a normal cryptid. I don't think that this thing is a werewolf. I think this thing wants you to be afraid.
It sure is a shame that they're so good at causing fear, but that's how it is. If you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know. All right, Keith, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Well, it's funny because my friends are funny, and we all come from different backgrounds. But anyway, we were kids and we were digging this cave, okay? And we're digging into the side of a cliff. So think about that. We're digging into the side of a cliff and we're going down. As we're digging, we're going down. We're young kids, and this was real important to us. I don't know why it was real important to us. Maybe it was just the thing to do. I don't know. But, you know, it seemed like a really cool thing to do. And John, we called him Zero the Hero. And we called him Zero the Hero for one reason and one reason only, because he never had any guts. He was never going to be the guy that was going to stand up and say, okay, I'm here with you. I got your 6. He was never that guy. And there was a whole bunch of us. Stovall worked on that cave. Bear worked on that cave. I mean, a whole bunch of us worked on that cave because we were kids. And it was like an effort. And we would go down there like almost every night, if not every night. And we would dig on that cave. And we'd dig into the ground and there'd be like 2 or 3 of us that would be digging, and there'd be 2 or 3 of us that would be putting the dirt in the bucket and taking the bucket out of the hole and dumping it. So here we are doing this. Of course, we were kids. We were making hot dogs and cooking stuff out on a campfire, thinking we were mountain men. And, here we are, city kids. We're just out there just digging this cave. So here's the crux of it all. Me and John were sitting outside of that cave entrance by the fire. And I don't remember what we were talking about. I don't even know if it matters anymore. I mean, man, that was a long time ago. But we were talking to each other, looking at each other. And here comes this bowling-sized boulder, literally a rock. And it hits the side of the cliff. And it falls down in front of the entrance of the cave. And we both are looking at the boulder as it hits. And then we both look at each other, and then we both look across the ditch. And here's this thing. This thing was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. And it had canine features, but beyond canine features. It had teeth, because really and truly, all I can tell you a little bit about its lower torso, but I can't quite tell you that. I can tell you about its face, because the only light we had was a campfire. So this thing was in the campfire light, and it was across a ditch about 10 feet away, literally 10 feet away. And this thing had the sharpest teeth I've ever seen on anything in my life. And had an extended nose, and it had pointed ears. And I swear to God, Vic, that thing smiled at me. The thing smiled at me. Its eyes were yellow or amber in color, and it was blotchy. It had white and tan fur. It had tannish orange white fur. And this thing had the most muscular upper chest, and this thing had long arms, longer than they should be, and this thing had black nails that I swear to God, the nails on this thing, its arms hung down below its knees, and this thing had 3 to 4 inch nails. And it was just sitting there laughing at us. And we looked at it, and as soon as we looked at it, as soon as we acknowledged it was there and it smiled, it ran up that hill so quick. It ran up a straight, almost straight, I would say about 95%. I mean, it literally floated up it. I mean, not floated, but it moved up it so quickly, and it was on. It was on. So you're talking about a bunch of 14, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds that are just out there trying to play some Led Zeppelin, trying to cook some hot dogs, dig a cave, and this thing is out there, and it's hunting you. And it moved so quick. I've never seen anything in my life move that quick. And I've seen a lot of things. I've never seen anything like that. And I'm going to tell you, straight up. We jumped in that hole. Now, at this point, we had the first room in the cave built, and we called that room Genesis, because Genesis, the beginning. So it was the beginning, and there was nothing else left. And we had sharpshooters, and we had shovels just kind of pointing out of that hole, the entrance into the side of that hill, with this thing all night walking around us, all night growling. It never howled, but it growled, and it was menacing. It was the most menacing thing I've ever heard and ever dealt with in my life. And nobody was going to come out of that hole. Nobody was going to come out of that hole. I saw a guy pee himself. You know, there's like 3 or 4 of us. Bear was in there. I think he peed himself. Literally. I mean, it was like pee was hitting the mud. It was like, well, that makes it easy for me to dig later. You know, not to be funny, but, you know, to be funny. It was just intense. And this thing was upstairs, man. It was above us. It was beside us, on either side, and it was taunting us. And you couldn't see it, but you could feel it. You could sure feel it. And this thing, you got this feeling, man. This thing was just here to scare the pee out of you. Literally, scare the pee out of you. And so here we are, a bunch of kids. Well, I say kids, we're young men. But, you know, I mean, it gets to be about 6:30. This probably happened about 10:30 at night and 11, something like that. So you got these kids sitting in a hole till about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, when the sun comes up and there's no more sounds. I mean, it's like being in World War I or something. It's like coming out of a trench. And we walked back to our house, or my house, and we go in the garage. And that's when the S hits the fan, man, because you're like, what did we just see? What did we just see? And everybody's sitting around with like white faces, and they're going, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was. But the funny thing is, we didn't let this stop us, because we invested so much time in this cave, and we dug it with our own hands, and I wasn't about to let some thing like that just take away everything we did, you know, even at that age. And the thing that's funny about it is, we went out there and we went down probably another 20 feet. And certainly it's amazing that this cliff of dirt didn't fall on us and kill us, because, you know, I mean, we're not engineers or anything like that, but it happened. And I can guarantee you this, after that first experience, we had like 3 or 4 campfires burning at night. And we always had somebody up top that was just sitting around watching. And the funny thing I can tell you about this thing is you always knew when it was coming because you could feel it before you heard it. So that's what freaks me out. That's really what keeps me up at night. That is the thing, because we were kids, and I don't think something like this needs to torture children. When they're out there just trying to build a tree house or dig a cave or do whatever they're trying to do, I think about it. I think about it a lot. It's had a very big experience on my life. I don't completely want to go into all of it, but yeah, it has. It has. And it's made me a better man. It's made me more understanding of the possibility of things that can be. And it's also left a lot of confusion in my brain. A lot of discourse and a lot of disheartenness, because I don't know what we saw. And I can give you other experiences. I mean, there's been plenty of experiences. When we were down there working on the cave and we had 3 or 4 braziers of fires going on at one time and a guy upstairs, and we'd sit around and everything would be fine. Crickets, frogs, everything's fine. And then everything would stop. Period. Everything would stop. The whole woods would stop. No sound. And you'd automatically get that fear. And that kind of fear, I was trying to explain to a friend of mine that kind of fear puts your heart in your throat, where you know what your heart tastes like. And we'd all be like, it's coming, it's coming. And then down the hall we'd go. And sure enough, it'd be up there. Cracking limbs, intimidating people, trying its best to scare the crap out of you. And then there was one time we tried to make a break for it. And we ran out of the, and this is not very far, man. This is like, maybe 50 yards. We're running like wild Indians down our path, because we come in and out of this place so much we leave a path. And this thing is flanking us. This thing is flanking us. As soon as we get to the woods, the edge of the woods, make that curve, turn right, it's gone. And here's another thing that's really, really messed up about this thing. Every time, and eventually, this is going to assault your manhood. Eventually, this is going to assault the nature of who you are. And you go down there, it's like you sit back and you go, ain't nobody going to keep me from this. Because you're a young man. You're young. You're stupid. And you go, nothing's going to keep me from doing what I want to do. And eventually, that just gets under your skin. It gets under your skin. It's like, and you go down there to fight it. And we had spears, and we had knives, and we used to have the spear called Ratsbane, because we killed rats with it in the sewer system. But anytime you went down there to fight it, it never showed up. I mean, it never showed up. It never showed up. It was only when you didn't expect it. So I'm not sure what that's all about. I would like to know what the nature of fear in this thing is, because I think this thing lives on fear. I think it gets off on it, if that makes any sense. I mean, look, there were times when I remember walking into the woods. And having John come running out. And the only thing he said, he was running as fast as he could, man. He said, "It's back." And I was like, "Okay, we're not going in the woods. We're not going in the woods, okay? We're not going to do that. This is not a good thing." And I got back to the house. I said, "What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about?" "It's back." What? He goes, "I saw it, man. I saw it. It came up and it ate the hot dog off the stick right in front of me, like 3 feet in front of me." I was like, "Oh my God. You gotta be kidding me, man. What are we going to do about this? How are we, you are killing my cool." I mean, that sounds funny, but for a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, you got to stop and think, man. This is like go to wartime. This is like, I am, So there were many times I would go out in those woods that I would go out there just to find it. I was completely unarmed. There is absolutely no way I could fight this thing. No way. But it just pissed me off that much. And tomorrow night, I'm probably going to go back out because I just want to see. I'm an old man now. I'm 54 years old. This happened in 1985, 1986, somewhere around there. And I just want to go back. I want to see. And I'm not so sure that I want to see, but I want to see. Because it's not going to scare me, man. You don't own me. You don't own me. And I got to tell you, Vic, I love you very much. I think the world of you. Your 7 words are awesome. And I think you're right, man. I think this thing lives on fear. So if I can stand up and I can tell you, I'm not afraid of you. You're not going to bully me. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. There's always been a bunch of strangeness that happened on that creek. We would walk down the creek bed and all of a sudden there'd be like a 1,000-pound log come lofting off the cliff into the water. And you look at it and you go, well, that's interesting. Wonder how that happened. I don't think that was falling from the sky. I don't think that was a tree branch. So, I mean, there's always been something weird going on down there. And it's just a strange place. And if you want to know where it is, I will tell you where it is. If you look up a place called Balmoral Elementary, Ridgeway Elementary, you will find it on a map. Okay? And this is in the area code of 38119. And if you go in between a road called Linfield, and I can't remember the other name. But anyway, on Linfield to the east, Balmoral to the west, you'll find that drainage ditch. To the north, you're going to find an entrance under the city of Memphis, and that is a sewer drainage. And that sewer drainage will get you anywhere in the world you want to go under the city. To the south, you're going to run into the creek. To the west of that, you're going to run into McKellar Lake, and that's going to be a tributary of the Mississippi River. To the east, you're going to run into Collierville, and you're going to run into more pastoral Tennessee. You know, you're going to run into more country life. But this whole creek, I think, is an infrastructure for this thing. And I think either it lived under the city or it still lives under the city. And I think it lives under a lot of our cities. I think that this thing uses tributaries, and I think it's transient. And I think it uses this to move its families and moves to hunting grounds. Because there's absolutely nothing to hunt around here. I mean, we got raccoon, we got fox, we got squirrels. That's about the extent of it, you know. We don't have bears. We certainly don't have anything that looks like that. 7.5 feet tall with sharp teeth, drooling on itself. No. And one of the things about this was that this was before we knew what a dogman was. This was before we knew what a dogman was. So we're, you're like racking your brains as a 15, 16-year-old kid. So what in the world is that? You don't think cryptoid. You don't think Bigfoot. You don't think Dogman. You don't think anything like that. You're thinking, I had a cousin who was a dear friend of mine, and he was like my best friend in the whole world. His name was Jeffrey. He's passed away now, and he was a good guy. And one of the smartest guys I ever knew in my life. And he always said that you guys disturbed some Indian burial ground, and now you got the spirit of this thing. And that never set right with me. It just never worked with me. I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe. Because when you're looking at something like that, that is that big and can move like that, anything's possible. But it's just, that's not my go-to thing. So I'm thinking that this thing is using the tunnels under Memphis to get from one place to another. And I'm thinking that it's a highway. And I'm thinking that it's using it to get to a hunting ground. So I don't think you can hunt it. I don't think you can kill it. I don't know. I just don't know. It leaves more questions than there are answers. I don't know. I just don't know, man. I mean, I used to have a nightmare. I had a reoccurring nightmare for about 20 years. And maybe some of your audience will find this funny because, it is funny. But my nightmare was, it happened almost every night with me for 20 years, where I would be, because the side of our house was about 50 yards from those woods. And they're not really woods, man. It's like just maybe an acre of woods. The back of the cave it was 50 yards to the houses on that drainage ditch. But anyway, I digress. My nightmare was constantly that it was a bright, sunny day, and I went to the bathroom. In that bathroom, where that window faced the back of those woods, and I was starting to urinate. And this thing slowly came out of the woods. And it just kept coming and coming and coming really slowly. And I couldn't stop urinating. But thank God it never made it to the window before I woke up, because God only knows what it would have happened. I'm trying to think if there's more things that I have to say about this. I don't think so. I think that's it.
Well, it's a lot to wrap your mind around, that's for sure. When that boulder hit the side of the cave, had it been thrown hard or fairly soft?
I would say fairly soft.
I didn't need to throw it all that hard to get your attention.
No, it was a bowling ball-sized boulder, man. I mean,
yeah, that's going to get your attention no matter what.
That's what's so funny is that I remember that more than anything, is that the boulder hit the side of the cliff and it rolled down. And by that time, we had dug that hole so deep that we had filled that ravine in front of us with dirt enough to form a platform. So it was really comical. I mean, it was like something out of Looney Tunes or something, because we both looked at the boulder, we both looked at the cliff, and it fell down, and we looked at each other, and then we looked across. I mean, at the same time. It was like something out of the Blues Brothers or something. I mean, it was just, what in the world is that?
Well, if you guys look like the Three Stooges out there, no one could fault you because, yeah, you're just trying to hold it together.
Well, I mean, we're kids. We're just kids. We're out trying to dig a hobbit hole, have fun, be in the woods, roast some weenies.
Like you said, you're just kids trying to have fun. It's just a shame that he had to come along and ruin that. When you first saw it standing on the other side of the ditch looking at you, was it standing still or was it moving?
Without question, it was standing still. It had dog legs. It had arms that were down in an abnormal way below its hips with extremely long claws. And it had human hands.
Do you think you're looking at a lab experiment that had gone wrong or something else?
That's a good question. What I think we're looking at is, this is my personal opinion, I think this is a cryptoid, and I think it is in the realm of Bigfoot, and I don't think anybody knows about it because it doesn't want to be known about. Bigfoot, from my understanding, I mean, you're always going to have some violent interactions with that kind of thing, I think. But this thing wants you to know it's there. I think this thing lives on fear. I think this thing is dangerous. I think this thing should not be messed around with. It's really hard to say. To judge this, is it a werewolf? I don't know. Is it? Is it some kind of government experiment gone wrong? Is it something left over from Chernobyl? I don't know. I don't know, but I know it's there. I know it's there. I mean, I'm not making this up. So what is it? And what kind of thing has teeth like that? Every tooth in its head was sharp. And it smiled at us. Now, here's the deal. It could have ripped us apart. This thing could have ripped us apart. It could have grabbed those shovels out of our hands, and it could come down in that hole, and it could have just buried us alive. But it didn't. So what's that all about? What is that about? And why is it living on fear? Why? I would love to know that answer. I understand that if you're a hunter and you're in the woods and you're out there hunting and the whole woods go silent and, okay, there's an apex predator out here. Okay, we're going to look at this. But this thing is different, man. This thing projects fear before it gets there. At least that was my experience. And I'm not going to take anything away from anybody's experience. And, that's another thing I wanted to tell you. I really appreciate you doing the job you do, and I really appreciate all the former guests that came on the show that talk about this kind of thing, because we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out. I don't know what this is, but it's out there. It's not imaginary. And I think it's flesh and blood.
Well, I wish they were imaginary, but as you saw, unfortunately, they're real and they're out there.
Oh, they're definitely out there. There's no question.
Besides being ridiculously sharp, was there anything else about its teeth that surprised you?
The width of its mouth. That thing could almost be a shark. The width of its mouth. It looked like it could hang its jaw back and just take a leg off. Literally. Like with one bite, just take a leg off. And this was a dog. This was a dog type. This wasn't a type 3 or any of that stuff. I've read your site and I think it's awesome. Like I said, I love the work you do. But no, this was a dog type. And this thing was aggressive. This thing was aggressive. And the thing hunted us. That's what's so weird. Because Bigfoot doesn't hunt you. Cryptoids don't hunt you. This thing hunts you. This is something like out of a nightmare. This is something out of a movie. This is like Predator. I only got limited experience, and I'm not sure I want to be involved in any more of this, but at the same time, I'm probably going to go out there tomorrow night just to go back to the cave and just to hang out there, just to see.
You don't frighten easily.
Well, I've been through my time.
Yeah, I'd say you must have been. There are a lot of people out there who are convinced that dogmen like that are just a type of evolved lemur, giant lemur. What would you say about that?
No, absolutely, totally not. No. And I'll tell you why. Anything that can leap up a 10-foot embankment without making a noise? Are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? The only time you're going to see this thing is when it wants to see you. You don't hunt it. It hunts you. And that's a fact. But the thing I can say about that is we walked away from it. And I think most people involved in this kind of research, or if you want to call it research, I call it nightmare, walk away from it. So I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure. That's why I think it lives on fear. I think it wants to get a rise out of you. I think it wants to play with you. And it doesn't matter if you have a 40 cal or a M60. It doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. This thing can outmaneuver you. This thing can outthink you. This thing can outflank you. This thing can outdo you. So what the nature of this is, I don't know. And that kind of reminds me of something spiritual in a way, but I don't want to go there. I just don't want to go there because I don't think that's the nature of this. I just think this thing is like the best hunter that's ever lived. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? It lives under our streets. It lives beside us. It only shows up when it wants you to be afraid. How do you deal with that? That's a really good question. How do you deal with that? There's a whole bunch of guys out there that have been in combat, and I'm going to tell you straight up, man, they're not going to deal with this. Ain't nobody going to deal with this. This thing, it's quiet when it wants to be. It's loud when it wants to be. It's silent when it wants to be. It attacks when it wants to be. And it installs fear in your soul. So what are we going to do about that? How can we cope with this?
Unfortunately, those guys are too good at what they do. Yeah, they're really good at getting a rise out of us whenever they want to. After it smiled at you, you said it ran up that steep cliff. Did it do that on 4 legs or 2?
2 legs. It was already on 2 legs. I never saw it on 4. It was up that hill like, never seen anything like it. I never seen anything like it. You're talking about 20 feet. And it didn't make a sound. That's one of the reasons why we thought that maybe this thing was some kind of spiritual creature, because it didn't make a sound when it went up that hill. So it's real confusing. It's real confusing. To get down to the nitty-gritty of all this, it's real confusing. It makes noise when it wants to. It's intimidating. It leaves fear in its wake. It lives for fear. So what is this? It could have ripped us apart, man. That thing could have ripped us to shreds. We're just 15 and 16-year-old boys. We didn't have a chance. We had what? What do we have? A knife? A spear? Sharpened sticks? This thing? You got to be kidding me. So that probably is the biggest confusion in my brain. And that's probably why I'm going back out. Because I want to understand why. Why would something function that way? That's not the nature of a predator. So what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with something spiritual? Are we dealing with something that we shouldn't be dealing with? Is this some kind of experiment gone wrong? Is it something left over from World War II? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you straight up, this is an apex predator on methamphetamine. It's just crazy.
I want the best for you, Keith. I really do. When you go out there tomorrow night, part of me hopes you get some answers, and another part of me hopes that you don't get those answers. If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. I'll tell you what, having said that, I've got a laundry list of questions to ask you still, but we're out of time. Would you mind coming back next week to answer all these questions for me that I still have for you?
I will, if you'll have me.
Great, yeah, I'd love to have you back on. Well, yeah, we'll just come back on next week and I'll have those questions ready for you. We'll take it from there then. Keith, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show this week, and of course, I'm looking forward to having you back next week, so thanks again so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to having you back.
Thank you, Vic, and thank you for everybody that listens, and thank you for your show, and I think the world of you because of the work you do.
Well, thanks for the good words, but I wouldn't have it any other way. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time, and we'll talk with you next week.